to 3 hours longer than normal, just because the integrity of the gravel roads is completely destroyed. And he has like a Jeep Wrangler, he has a male vehicle specific, but he's like, my expert opinion is that you should not be driving anywhere today. No, my party for today has started already. It's called Tell Me a Fart Joke. It's a 30-year-old, so 30.
Oh, I got.
Where are you gonna go? I'm gonna go about 7.
Okay, well you should just pick me up along the way.
All right, you guys have fun.
Bye, Miss. Thank you.
Does he live in here? Well, our neighborhood. Fifth and 19th? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Missy. So you're going at 7?
Andrea might. No, that's a. And you can plug it into my computer if you're not getting a charge off that. Is it working?
There's a brick in here, but the wrong cable. So if you have a cable, you can make a brick in here.
No, wrong cable. It's
Oh, iPhones. Okay, guys. So we have a lot to bang through. You guys keep eating. I just want to talk to you about when you're doing your demo teaching. When we're in class, we have 75 minutes, and because you're familiar with the sequence, we're able to cover a lot more ground. When you are so oily, when you guys are demo teaching, go ahead and look back at the sequence. All of the sun salutation A and B, all of the standing postures, transitioning to the floor, making sure that you're remembering to do the Virabhadrasana sequence. And then at the bottom of the list, Dandasana, Paschimottanasana, write this down, Dandasana, Paschimottanasana, Purvottanasana. We'll just write it down at the bottom of the page 5 or page 7, just so you know what you should be covering in 60 minutes.
I can't read that chart. That's why I'm like, so we're doing.
So all of the Surya A, Surya B, the fundamental standing asanas, including the Virabhadrasana sequence, down to seated Dandasana. So this is where the chart cuts off. It gets you up into the primary sequence.
So you're writing that down.
You're writing down Dandasana, Paschimottanasana, Purvottanasana, just A, Paschimottanasana A. Purvottanasana, upwards. From here, you skip through to Setu Bandhasana, bridge. You skip the rest of the seated postures. That takes a lot of time. Some variation of shoulder stand, either full shoulder stand or Viparita Karani, supported by the block. When you're teaching, skip headstand. That's for you. That's not for now.
So not halasana.
No. And we'll talk about why later, but Setu Bandhasana, Sarvangasana, some variation. Setu Bandhasana, Sarvangasana, Urdhva Dhanurasana,
Sarvandasana.
shoulder stand.
Oh. Oh. All right.
So we're skipping around. We're just expediting the sequence. Urdhva Dhanurasana.
Are we doing it in the order of the primary series?
Mm-hmm. But you're skipping the seated postures. And the meditative postures. Just meditative seat, 30 breaths. Not focusing on the binds or... This is just to make it fit into a 60-minute sequence, including Shavasana.
So on here it says 9 Vinyasas and 17. We're just going to do 3 and 3, right?
This counts inhale up is 1, exhale down. So this gets into kind of the nuance of the Ashtanga execution. So don't follow these counts. In terms of rounds are different than the vinyasas in terms of the tight technical aspects of it. 3 rounds, Surya A, 3 rounds, Surya B.
So just to make sure I got the dasana.
Paschimottanasana,
A.
Purvottanasana,
Danasana. And then Setu.
skipping 2, Setu Bandhasana, bridge, Sarvangasana. No, in between. Sarvangasana, shoulder stand. So the shape just flips. It goes opposites. So back bend, then into flexion. Sarvangasana, shoulder stand. Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't have.
It probably has some funky variation of it with the hands crossed and the feet turned out. That's the traditional Ashtanga style. Then some variation of Urdhva Dhanurasana, and then the meditation postures. Just meditation seated. Urdhva Dhanurasana, wheel. Seated meditation. That's 60 minutes, including Shavasana. Page 4. These are my objectives for you throughout this program. So safety first, foremost and always. Knowing how to keep people safe. This is, it's kind of like the CrossFit of yoga, right? A lot of people do it. It's the most popular style of yoga practice worldwide, and you don't see the people that fall off. You see the people that rise to the top. You don't see all the people that don't make it. There's a lot of injuries in this practice. So it's important for us to understand as teachers where those risks are. Number 2, know the Ashtanga Vinyasa fundamental standing postures. 3, be able to lead class from memory with the Sanskrit and the English. I think it's very important to learn the Sanskrit because it is the most international practice, and I think it's really important how that serves as a common denominator. So if you go to Korea, and you can still practice along with them if they're using the Sanskrit. So it's really nice to have that shared language. This goes along with number 1, but know the limitations and modifications of each asana, not of the whole sequence, but of the ones that we are going to be responsible for leading. be able to progress and regress asanas to suit the needs, the goals, and capabilities of students, including the safe and purposeful integration of props. When I've seen demonstrations, when I've been in Ashtanga classes, they rarely use props. I don't know if it's an intentional pushback against Iyengar style, if there was some intentional deviation there, just because they were from the same lineage. The philosophies are very different between Iyengar and Ashtanga Vinyasa. For me, as a teacher and then leader of this program, I think it's important for you to understand how to support your students' success with props. They're there, they're great tools, know how to use them. Understand how to create a safe space in your classroom and why this is important. We'll talk about these concepts more in depth next weekend. Understand consent as it applies to guiding students both physically and verbally. Give supportive, student-focused, and consensual hands-on adjustments. And understand how to give and seek meaningful feedback as both a student and as a teacher, a student of this program, and then a teacher reading the feedback from your students' executions of these postures. So, I'm going to leave you guys this up to you to do these translations. I've given you the Sanskrit. You need to know what the English names are. Going.
This was, I never knew that was count.
Ekam, inhale. See, you're cracking the code. Okay. The Ashtanga count goes up much higher than this. These are the ones you're going to encounter the most. These are the ones that I've committed to memory. So those are my sangs. Done. I'm done after 8. I don't need to know anymore. Ekam. When it's Romanized or when it's transliterated, if you hear an Indian person pronounce W's and V's, they transpose them. And same with S and SH. So sometimes it's Shavasana, Shavasana, Savasana. It's kind of a blended sound. So my pronunciation isn't very beautiful, but Ekam, Dwi, Yeah, that's the more traditional pronunciation is SH. So Shavasana instead of Savasana. It's not wrong, but it's closer to the Sanskrit. Dwi, Trini, Chatvari or Chatwari, Pancha, Shat, Sapta, Ashta. So that's an example of the SH. Actually, most of these will be SH, right? Padangush Dasana, Padahashtasanam. So go through those on your own. I try to use these a lot in class, so hopefully you're hearing those. And I'm going to make a more concerted effort this week to transition into using more Sanskrit. In terms of practical usage with your class, one thing I hope to have demonstrated in my teaching is attaching the Sanskrit in a meaningful way. So of course, we've been doing this a lot. We don't have them all memorized. When you're leading class, it's important for students to hear them, but not important for them to know them as the reference point. So setting up the posture, for example, inhale, hands up, exhale, hands down. So again, another round, inhale. We know what the action is. Now we can attach it to the vocabulary. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasanam. Exhale. We know that position is Uttanasanam. Okay. So the Sanskrit isn't the priority. It can get a little bit jargony, but for me, I think it's important for them to have the exposure. Okay. Page 12. Yes. Yes. Padahastasana, Padangushtasana. Gushtasana, big toe. Big toe. Mm-hmm. Big toe pulling. How'd we do with our chaturangas? Deadpan. Okay. So I want you to get together. This is the one it's so important to workshop. There's so many pieces. I want to think I keep evolving with how I approach this. I used to be really firm on keeping people on the floor until they came away from the floor. I wasn't super successful with that because people just weren't patient with the process. So knowing that, I needed to be more willing to. If a student is able to pull from, this is Ashtanga Namaskar, 8 points. So the chin is the 8th point. From here, if people can pull into Chaturanga, they're strong enough to go into it from top to bottom. It's a lot harder to come from the bottom up and hold the position than it is to come from top down. So I would use that. I used to set that up as kind of a test. I think the mechanics are really good, but people just weren't following. So now I've started to reverse engineer the other way. People want to feel that shape as they're used to it. So I'm working within that framework. So what I want you to do is get together with a partner, and I want you to basically go through the process of what we did with Missy. So you're not going to cue them. They're going to put themselves in the position. It should be a position that you can sustain for 5 breaths. What I want you to do is to look at what compensations you're seeing, what breakdowns are you seeing in their execution of the posture. And then I want you to start to think about, why are they having those breakdowns? What are some possible reasons for that? What are some limitations in the body? And then with that in mind, what are some things that we could do to address that? So for example, we're still focused on chaturanga because you guys already have some notes to work off of from the video. So from here, if we see this is a big one, right? We see people pitching their shoulders forward, okay? Your partner's just going to hold the position. You're not going to give them any cues. They know the posture for themselves. You're going to say, okay, what do I see? I see, making a note, I see shoulders pitching forward. I see this, I see that, I see whatever. Where do you see the breakdowns in the posture? Or what modifications are you seeing? Why? Why do you think that's happening? Identify the breakdowns. Ask yourself why. Hypothesize. What could be some reasons for that? We have to do the double-blind test. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe they have an injury. Maybe they have tight hamstrings. Maybe they have there's a million different reasons why something could be happening. I want you to just brainstorm what could be happening. Thinking about what you are hypothesizing, then you are going to think about possible solutions in terms of modifications, regressions, props. Do we understand? So what's our first step? Identify the breakdown. Second step? Figure out why. Third? Find some solutions. Okay? Hey, raise your hand. Raise your hands. No. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as a teacher, I'm not always totally 100% confident that I know the posture. Can I say perfectly? Like what I shouldn't see. So sometimes I'm a little shaky there. And so,
drawing from your pool of knowledge as it stands right now. Yep. Just work off what you know. That's all. Right.
I appreciate your honesty.
I figured before I said that, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
All of us. All of us. Yeah, it's always troubleshooting and staying curious.
You know, you get different information.
Right. I don't always know the modification. Like, how can I help you?
This is the way it should be. No.
Sometimes we don't even know we're doing it wrong, right?
I think it evolves over time too, as we understand the human anatomy and physiology.
Totally.
And it'll change, like maybe in 10 years we're going to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe we'll be very
Yeah. And so
Teacher changes.
yeah. And so the biggest thing with that is, for me, whenever I'm leading these, you're going to go out and do it the way that you're going to do it, the way that you feel confident and comfortable with. My biggest thing is that you break the habit of, well, this is what I was taught. So understanding if you do it with purpose, if you understand what your objective is, I feel like bless you, I feel like you're never going to go wrong, right? Again, the information does change, so we might have a different focus. But as long as it's purposeful and it's safe, you're going to be okay. But it's, for me, the biggest challenge is getting people out of that mode of operation. Well, this person just told me this. This person just told me this. This person just told me this. So that's where we start to get into the biggest issues. So yeah, you're just going to keep pulling from what you know, and then you keep learning more. That's it. So based on what you know now, and then we're going to start to get into some more technical aspects and some more of the nuanced information of it. Okay, so let's how should we do this? Shoot. Okay. Avec moi. I know. Clearly. Just keep dancing. Okay. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Are we doing it like
No. Well, because I'm not gonna talk you. So you guys, you aren't gonna have a discussion about this. We're gonna come back into the big group and talk about it. You're just using them as an experimental specimen. It's like, it's gotta be the best chaturanga of my life.
Oh, I'm not. No, we're just watching.
Okay, you got your notes? It's okay. I'm just wearing such flexible new pants. I got so much energy. All this oil. You're like, redo. I committed too much. Go ahead. I'm in too deep.
I was so proud of myself.
No. I'm reviewing my mental snapshot. We're going to talk about it in the big group. So you just How are we doing, guys? Another minute? Less than? Good. Then what was working and where then the other side of the equation, how could you progress it? You know, some one arm craziness or one leg craziness. Bouncing on that's easier than a one arm chaturanga. Oh my God. Yeah, turn yourself around.
Oh, there was another cue I see that I wrote after watching the video. Cues level your pelvis.
Sorry, level pelvis, and what's the other one? Upper back is highest.
Yeah, middle back. We're saying middle back is highest. And it seemed like to me my upper back was highest. At least that's how it felt.
Okay. So let's talk about this. What are some things that we saw? What were some of our rationales for that? And then how did we address that? I guess I can start. So one thing I noticed it with her, I noticed it with Carla. In the modified position, the feet were up. Because we do, that's a low plank, right? Or like a modified push-up. Sometimes it's a modified push-up, yeah? Yeah. This is the first time I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Oh, for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why I do that.
Yeah.
try not
It's
to.
easier, it's less weight, but I put my legs down. I feel there's more weight. It's lessening the weight to me. Do you feel that too?
Yeah.
Especially in the low back.
But I know I do that
Yeah,
because of
probably.
the
There's
show.
a season on
There's
that.
not a
Yeah.
reality to that because I feel like you're pushing more of the weight forward. So instead of having the anchor behind you, like you're also dipping into your low back because it creates the curve of the spine.
When the feet are up or when the feet are down?
Which is probably why my low back is dipping. Your low back.
Uh-huh, yeah.
It's harder to create a problem. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started, I'm like, oh, that hurts. So this is easier, but not realizing I'm creating another problem.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Yeah.
And
And
this,
here,
right?
my other question was, are you toes down to the mat or tops of the feet?
Okay, so knowing that this is a regression for the eventuality of chaturanga, what would preview the shape more? Toes, right? Because we do chaturanga like this, right? So this would make sense to preview the shape with the toes pushing. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a more appropriate preview of the shape that they're going into. Yeah, I was playing around with that. Just, you saw, I was just playing around with that. My thinking is that if there's some limitation in using the glute, that the sensation is that the hamstring is pulling here. So you're generating strength from here rather than from your butt. And so that's continuing to perpetuate that compensation. So to deal with that, if that were the obstacle, just, reverse firing of the muscles to have you work with the toes tucked under. Yeah, I think it makes more sense. I can't think if it would ever make sense to have the feet up as a preview for chaturanga, as a regression to chaturanga. It previews a shape better, and it gets you to be using your lower body. Your lower body's participating now, and it wasn't participating when the feet were up.
I can start off like this. But then,
No, I mean the knees are still down, but the feet are tucked under.
I usually do it like this, but I did it like this because over time I know I'm tired.
I think that's good. And then just making sure the feet are participating by keeping them tucked.
When you say tucked, this is okay.
Yep.
That's what I never understood.
Yeah, okay, we're making progress.
Well, I was thinking of like the bottom of the pelvis rather than the actual pelvis.
Okay.
I was like, I don't understand what you mean.
So, your date with the skeleton was very illuminating. Okay. So I think that was one thing, just like the lower body was kind of dropping off. So if there's, again, a way to approach that, a way to start bringing that information in would be to have you tuck the toes. A small modification. Okay, what else did you guys, Heather, what did you see? Yes. It was like,
I mean, but identify breakdowns, none, because she's a rock star. Why none? I'm sure she did something to trick me, but I don't know what it was.
No, I wasn't. I was just like, 5 breaths, right? I have to commit to these 5 breaths because I've made a show of it.
I forgot to look at your head. The direction was going, and that's been a big change for me.
Yeah.
And then I also forgot to look at your hands. So I made a list of my shortcomings as opposed to anything that you did correct.
Yeah, I noticed that, and when we get tired, the whole shape starts to collapse. So I could feel wasn't doing it on purpose. It's just what happens when we get tired. So giving me an intentional focal point to build the shape around that rather than having to fight it to come back up.
So when you are looking forward, how much of because there's looking forward to the top of your mat.
And then there's looking up, looking forward. So that
What's the direction?
So that the back of
So
the,
more toward the front of your mat.
Yep.
Front of your mat.
Yep. So long as there's no wrinkles in the back of the neck. There never should be wrinkles in the back of the neck.
So all week when she's been thinking about, I've been looking at her.
What you doing? Like,
Guys.
yes.
Okay, give me, so if we saw more than one, that's fine. It gave us a lot to work with. Right now, for the sake of time, give me one thing from your partner, one thing that you saw, and that one solution you came up with, or one way to support them. Team?
She was pull up, and I noticed this was on a little bit, and we just going to do, and she corrected it though, and she
Uh-huh. So why is that happening?
um,
Do we know why that's, do we know what we're talking about? We're all on the same page visually? Okay. This, yeah?
Yeah,
Yes, no, maybe so?
maybe so. Yeah, like that.
Okay. Why does this happen? Okay. We're starting to sink into the joints rather than using the muscles to keep it a sustained shape. Here. So this part, so this is what I'm referring to. This part should stay highest at all points. The other thing, the other reason that's happening is the trajectory of the action. So
Oh, that way. See, I was going to the middle of your back, this way, like that, and then that's impossible. You're talking about
the spine.
middle of the, yeah, spine. Okay, now it makes it much better.
So we have different middles, I guess.
Oh, you're right.
Uh-huh.
That's impossible.
See, it's just interesting how like you think how your brain and
How you hear something,
Yeah.
Communication,
Yeah.
everything, interpretation.
So the trajectory of the movement, the body moves in curves, right? When, again, it's that push-up action. When we think about pushing down and up, we think top to bottom. Chaturanga actually comes forward. So it's making sure that that curve, it's like doing the worm, right? So when we start to pull the floor, this is correct, but without rounding out, that'll stay depressed in the middle. So if I'm here, I'm pulling the floor, this is correct. What I need to do to keep it correct is to pull forward towards the front here. You can see I'm like shaking in my ribs and stuff, okay? So, and then that stays elevated. Yep, pull the elbows. There's a lot of different cues. Yeah, pull the shoulders away from the ears, pull the elbows back, pull the ribs up. But mostly, it's this idea, when it gets to that nuanced, is getting them into that curved trajectory. And then that's a lot harder.
I don't feel like I do that.
Most people don't. And I really didn't start understanding that until I started doing more handstand practice and understanding how to stack. So when handstand, it's not just getting up and sticking it, it's all this rotation back through the shoulders, and then the body kind of curves through the back, and then it comes through the pelvis, and then it comes back through the hips, and then it extends through the legs. So there's all of this winding around and all these pieces that have to keep shifting as you're getting into a press when it's an active movement rather than just trying to hold a line. So then it started to say, oh, well, if we're doing that vertically, then the same thing must be happening horizontally, right? So, yeah, freeze frames. Yeah, and this is the thing. So, to speak to that really quickly, people don't hurt themselves falling over in class. People hurt themselves in chaturanga. So this is why this is what we're focused on. You didn't break anything. People were built to land, right? Also, it's safer to land in the middle of the room than it is to land compressed against a wall. This is when you're going to pinch a nerve. If you're just able to go into gravity, you'll be fine. So for teachers, just as a side teacher note with that, I'm not going to tell you not to teach that as part of your sequence. Do it mindfully, whatever you're capable of supporting. But also making sure that people never end on a fall, that we don't want that to be their muscle memory. Okay, headstands, handstands, any sort of inversion, they never end on a fall. Their body needs to know another thing as it comes out of it. Yeah.
I think a fall teaches you though, like a lot, like oh, I don't want to do that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, oh, and you're not going to die.
Yeah.
You're okay. It's a calibration, right? You know what's more. You know what's enough by knowing. It's a learning tool. Yeah, really. You know what's totally.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost about that factor. They're gonna go back or handstands, knowing to make a cartwheel.
Mm-hmm.
Real look over like just being like, you're not gonna fall.
Because that's not true.
Right.
Yeah, it's demonstratively untrue because gravity continues to work depending on whatever. And yep.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah. Were you against a wall? Okay.
but then it's my shoulder. And I ended up going to physical therapy.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that's what did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that's what did it.
Yeah. You're not gonna. Yeah. It hurts. You'll be okay.
I'll try to change.
Yeah. You got right back up. You know. And that's the thing. Like when we think about trauma of hitting something, the stress on a joint over time is 2,000% worse. So I cannot stress this enough. This is the most dangerous posture we ever do in yoga. This is why we're dedicating so much time to it. And because people are not patient, and because we're horizontal, it's so heavy. The upper body is the least developed part of the body, muscularly, right? Our lower bodies can carry us a lot more than our upper body. And we're not in the habit of using it. So this is why we have so much trouble here.
Well, like us, you know, some other us, they have bringing it down so much that it is being feel it in your body too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so like I said, sometimes you have to trick people into doing it, right? You know, making them hold those goddamn blocks for 5 rounds until spin turtle shell. Okay. Allie, how was the situation with Raylene? Give me one observation and then one solution.
And so I think that was my application. I was like rolling the weight into the palm.
Uh-huh.
And
Why do you think that was happening? What is that telling us about her body?
that, like, I guess her shoulders or her elbows are like taking the weight out here.
Mm-hmm.
Arms.
As opposed to what? What should be happening?
Wrapping towards
Mm-hmm. But where's the muscular breakdown? So we know that it's the load is getting dumped here because of the back's not carrying it, right? So we know that this isn't happening enough to take it out of here. Okay, so it might be a placement issue. It might just be that. Most likely not. If that's happening to that extent, to where there's dumping, the muscles aren't firing. So what was your solution for that? Okay. Were her elbows popping out too? No, just the hands.
I noticed that too. I could feel it. I was over here too much.
I wouldn't say that your elbows were super way out. I felt like your elbows were in, and maybe that's why my mind instantly goes more to like where she's placing the weight in her hand.
Yeah, that's
Not, like,
interesting.
telling her to like lift back more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Huh, okay. But the elbows were staying in and the chest was lifted, everything else was on cue?
Everything else was good.
Okay.
Low back was good.
Mm-hmm.
She did have, I felt like a good lift into like the middle of her back.
Okay. This team.
So I want to.
Ask away, Gloria.
I'm a zigzagger. I'll tell you what. So I was thinking about what we talked about earlier today, and that keeping the same cues all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Sometimes I find it helpful to come at it a different way when people aren't, understanding that cue. Maybe if I try it this way, they'll get it.
Mm-hmm. And the feedback will dictate that. the idea is, I did this, I wish I knew which class it was. I was intentionally cueing, push the big toes, pull the knees open, just so you guys could see that echo of movement throughout. So when Andrea and I were talking about this last night, from her on the Sara world, what do they say? Pull the shins in, roll the, they probably, some fucking spiral, right? Like spiral something and then pull something else in. It's the articulation of the body should be the same. The expression is different. And so for, obviously a lot of people do Anusara, a lot of people get it. So that cue is okay, so long as people understand what's going on. So the objective is a little bit different in terms of using the cue over and over again. It's seeing the transferability. Right. And so, but then if the feedback is so that they aren't getting it, then try a different way with different words, for sure. Yeah, it's just such. That sounds great for you. Okay. Bring it to the group. Mm-hmm.
So for modifications.
Well, so then back that up. Why did you think, what was your hypothesis and why that was happening? Of? We're not saying core.
Strength of the spine, maybe.
Do you want to phone a friend? It's like. Here's why this is important to identify those breakdowns, because then you give them a meaningful piece to work with. So if it's a situation where their glutes aren't firing, you're going to do one thing. If it's a situation where their support muscles along the rib cage aren't firing, that's a different thing. If they aren't internally rotating with the arms, that's a different thing. So it's really important to pinpoint and then prioritize how you want to attack it.
It would have been different with her. Yeah, my back just comes up when I put my feet down. So
Well, and hers did too.
Yeah, no. Put your.
And her back hurts with the feet down because she's collapsing.
Oh, your back hurts here?
No, it hurt like that.
Ah, okay.
So that's why I was lifting. It hurts when I do this. All the weight was coming, so I should have been doing this. Right?
I think what happened is also like, not only did you drop your legs, but like you adjusted your hips, because your hips were just like bending all the way forward, and then you pulled them back and like pushed your hip bones forward. There's a difference than just letting it like drop all the way forward, like through your belly.
So to you, it might have felt like one thing moved, but you completely reorganized the shape so that your lower back didn't hurt. But originally when she was doing it with the feet up, your tailbone was up, and that was to switch the fulcrum point of the weight, so it didn't hurt. Yeah. And so this is why she was the chatter. If you watch your video, yeah, then she swayed, the feet are up, the collapse is there, but she's created a compensation here where she's not feeling it in her low back because her tailbone is up. So then when she puts her feet down, it forces her to reckon with that piece and to get it in the right place so it doesn't hurt. So it might be, again, we don't know specifically is it a lower body strength issue, is an upper body strength issue, does she have a pain in her wrist, is there, you know what I mean? So it's just picking one mode of operation and going after it, hypothesizing one thing and saying, okay, I'm going to see if the glutes are the issue, if we tuck it under, if we can access some of that so we can build that up to help carry some of the weight. But yeah, the sway back thing is because that goes and then this goes, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so reverse. Carla, would you give me one thing that you observed, one possible reason for that, and then what was your solution?
I didn't see breakdowns. I saw that she was self-adjusting very positively. She pushed into her index finger mound and we redistributed the weight in her hands. Brought the tailbone up and the ribs up right away. We brought the elbows in at a 45-degree angle. I didn't see any breakdowns, but like transitioning in, what would I say? How would she continue to progress? That she did look forward, which we were looking forward.
I did several self-connections or self-corrections while I was in that position.
Mm-hmm.
I started kind of thinking through the self-corrections. But that, the strength was there in her low back and in her shoulders. It was all there. The weight was evenly distributed in the hands, but she did kind of mentally go through it all and adjust.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so you saw the checkpoints for safety. You saw the index fingers connecting, you saw the shoulders pulling away from the ears, you saw the ribs lifting, and you saw that forward curving trajectory of the posture.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, she did have to pull her shoulders back. And you must be really strong because I always try to suck my elbows like in, and you're able to put them like exactly to the side without them going out, if that makes sense. There's a pretty good space in there. It's not going out, but it's not super in. Does that make sense?
You should be in.
Okay.
So what does that tell you? That's a compensation.
It's compensation.
Yep.
So that was, yeah.
So what could be a reason for that? What could be a reason for letting them hang out a little bit? Might be a strength issue, right? Being able to pull back so that the elbows, we know that, right? When we're on the blocks, we can feel it. If we take less weight, we're able to spin more. So when we have more weight, we can't spin underneath of us. Okay. So yeah, it might be a strength thing. It might be a mobility thing if the shoulder blades aren't able to wrap, aren't able to move around to the front.
And my shoulders are the shoulders of a 68-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't.
There's just not as much mobility, but that's relative. That's okay. So then we have to ask, well, what is the sensation? What do you feel in terms of like when your shoulders are resisting and they're giving you a little hassle? Where do you feel it and what are you feeling?
And see, I don't feel anything.
Okay.
It's the wheel and
Mm-hmm. Okay.
where I feel the tension sensations.
Okay. So,
I notice when I come up into a basic job, when when watching videos, I can't come as far up and back. That could be a lot. That's a lot.
yeah.
My hips too are probably tight.
So there's a lot with that. That's the other big one, right? That's the other doozy. Okay, we got through everybody. We understand this process. So for yourself, I'm curious what you observed and what your understanding of that compensation is, and then what do you think needs to happen? What did you observe of yourself in this execution in real time?
I am experiencing pressure. And I know that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's so interesting though, because all this is there, but it's just, and maybe that's just like correcting muscle memory. Like your body's gotten stronger and this just hasn't relearned the right place to, that's so interesting.
Looking down, I'm really conscious of it. I don't really
Yeah.
I had pressing my knuckles and all that. I have to always think about it.
But it's just interesting that it's independent. You know what I mean? It's independent of everything else going on.
Tiger, how flexible she is.
No.
She's so flexible.
That's why I was.
No.
I also have my left shoulder like it's been messed up for years too. Pinches come down. I baby it.
But you don't have any pain in your wrist, or you do?
Not my left one. Sometimes you're right.
Because it's taking more weight.
Probably.
Okay.
Because, yeah, what, that,
I use my hand more.
no, we talked about the wrist, but a lot of people struggle, I think, down to the dog. with wrists and stuff, especially beginners.
Why?
Well,
So I want that.
It's the
Them with the
weight.
weight in the wrists rather than back, right?
I like
This is the.
push so much of their.
Is it all, that's all where their pressure.
totally.
More, it's the weight's not evenly distributed between the front back of their body, is that right?
So sometimes I have them do blocks and back their wrists off.
Yeah. We'll get to, that's another, again, these super common ones. Yeah. So I'm going to give you just like some major checkpoints on those so we can bang on as much as possible. But just for your own personal practice, I want to know what you see as things that you saw demonstrated in the video, and then how you see what you need to do. What work is there to be done in terms of your execution of the postures? What'd you see in the videos?
Difficult to tell in the video, but it's.
You mean if they were bowing out?
And I know that that's because I feel the narrative that I tell myself is I'm super weak. I have no strength, and so I just the whole keeping your arms straight until strength develops was the modification. And that, sorry, was I supposed to?
Yeah, no, exactly. Right? Okay. Carla, what'd you see? Pick one. And that's the thing, right? It's important that we stay in a workable space. So let go of the laundry list, just one actionable thing. Aha.
So I would have to say my other one would be probably hunching my shoulders. I tend to, because I don't have the strength. I think I'm still, even though I'm lifting up, I'm still squeezing my neck. And does it make sense? Like my shoulders. So I'm creating the space, but then I'm still squeezing. So I need to probably look forward to release that because I can't squeeze if I'm looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
you're straining the back of your neck.
Yes.
Right here.
So guys, let's talk about this. This is going to cross a lot of different postures, and it's very important that you see this compensation pattern. Go ahead and relax for a second. People that have limited mobility in their thoracic spine, they overuse their necks. So if you have somebody that can't move their trunk a lot, they're going to overuse their neck. Forward, up. There's a lot of turtlenecking that happens because this gets locked out, so they're compensating here. So this is the first thing you're going to notice. If somebody has a very back, check the back of their neck. It's going to have a wrinkle here because they're going to try to look up. They're going to try to get the posture forward and up, and the back is going to lock them and say, you don't have any more space. They're going to create space here. They're going to compress their neck along the way. So with that, they need to do separate things in order to open that up. In that moment, you need to change their visual focal point. Get the wrinkles out of the neck. There's no benefit in that. Only compression and only strain. Okay, so change the trajectory of the posture or of the visual. Okay, and then another thing I want to talk about with Carla. Back to, and I didn't pick up on this idea of unknowing versus unable. So obviously she has a tailbone. I just thought, yeah, but now we've clarified. So now you are knowing. Okay, and in the moment, everything's going fast, you're out of breath, and whose tailbone goes where anyway? Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that bone. Some bigger than others. Okay. What else did we see on the video, and then how did we come up with a solution to address it of ourselves, of our chaturangas specifically? I'm just so I gotta look into this. It's so interesting to me. No homework. Are you getting the emails? Yesterday.
It's my work phone, but it was yesterday.
Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. Mm-hmm. So we need to, again, identify, separate. It's not bicep, tricep strength. It's here. It's all these serratus muscles, and it's all these retractor muscles here. This is what starts to fall off, particularly here through the back, because we're always in this position. So the shoulder blades have just lost their strength in pulling back and down. So this is what you'll see. You'll see it here. That's a strength issue here, and then in the retractors. If
And where you were doing chair pose with the hands on the waist, rolling the shoulders back and bringing the elbows together. And I think that's just brilliant because you really,
Thanks.
when you do that, you feel your shoulder blades coming together.
Yeah.
Strengthening that upper back. So I've done that a lot.
Yeah. Well, good. And sometimes it's helpful, especially with beginner students, is to make the move. It's like with babies. You're working with like big babies. They like, where is your arm? And you over exaggerate the movement, and then they can mimic that.
So you do this, and then I say, okay, now bring your hands up and see if you can get that same sensation.
Yeah. So once they see the obvious example, then now you guys are at the point in your practice where you can understand the subtlety of here to here, right? So it gets more nuanced. Okay, we got a lot to get through in a very short amount of time. Let's start with the standing postures. What is the first one here? What is the name of the first standing fundamental asana? After the sun salutations. Padangushtasana. So write it down, page 13, asana, Padangushtasanam. There's no actual M, but my teacher was harped on that. It massages your brain. So, Padangushtasanam. What are the contraindications? What are the risks with this posture? Low back strain, totally. That's an obstacle, yeah, as it's attached. What's super, this one is super important just to understand the dangers. What is the danger? Okay, yeah, if somebody has some equilibrium problems, vertigo, anybody that has blood pressure issues coming into that inverted position. This includes even, pressure behind glaucoma, anything that has to do with blood pressure. This carries a special risk with it. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you a little spiel. If you watch a traditional demonstration, there's a lot of, and again, we hear this a lot, this hinging forward and working from this extended space. I do not recommend this, and here's why. In terms of having yoga be a useful tool for everyday living, this is not the correct biomechanics for how we should move. When you're going into, pick something up from the floor, we shouldn't pick something up like this. You shouldn't train your body that's the instinctual thing to do. We can work mindfully from this space in an Ardha Uttanasana or something where we're holding and we understand how to reorganize ourselves to execute that. In terms of transitions, it should be a position that your body needs to get used to using. This is one of my big criticisms of how Ashtanga is done. I think this is why a lot of people fuck up their backs doing Ashtanga, and I think it's very unnecessary. So the head is incredibly heavy. If we are in this position, it has a load of 30 to 35 pounds. If we're here, upwards of 40. That's a lot of load on the back. And if people are doing this, they don't understand how to reorganize themselves to carry the weight properly. We cue the chin in first. We roll down. This protects the low back. We come up. This is also good for protecting people if they have blood pressure issues. helps their blood pressure equalize. So we are reducing and hopefully minimizing and eliminating that risk. Also, we gradually pour the weight down, we gradually release the weight up. This is also integrating that biomechanical information of how to work the spine in curves. If you're coming into extension, rolling in flexion, rolling into extension, you understand the transition of the spine. Okay. There's a different philosophy when you get into a more extreme style of practice with Ashtanga Vinyasa. For what we're doing as leaders of this, in terms of sharing it and taking and advocating for students, I think this is the smartest approach. Especially in the Western lifestyle, there just isn't a lot of movement in general. People are very, very disconnected with their bodies. And everybody has low back pain, and everybody has tight hips. So we need to work within those limitations. Obstacles. Panangushtasana obstacles. Tight hamstrings. What else? Just limited mobility through the entire length of the spine. Yeah. What other obstacles? Those are the big ones. Okay. Underdeveloped adductors. Underdeveloped feet. ADD, adductors. Pulling into the middle. So these inner thigh muscles, this inner line is really underdeveloped. And that's why the big toes have that hard time. The majority of the weight rolls out. This is from shoes. This is from a lot of stuff. So we have that obstacle. I was showing Gloria this modification here. So when you set somebody up against the wall takes a lot of the weight. Then they're still able to mimic the position and come here. You're kind of cheating the angle, you're shortening the distance. So they don't have to cross as far, right? You're making it accessible. So you can place people up against the wall. And then even, I've got a ton of space here, but there's still, you can still work here, even with a lot of mobility.
So tell me, what's the difference between standing and
It's a lot harder on the floor. Mechanically, it's the same. The floor locks you into a more limited space. So here, anything against the floor, it's always going to be harder because you can't. So you know how I was pushing my butt behind me here? People don't have that option. They can only go so far as the floor. So you need to create that same shape here. See how my butt's behind my ribs now? But that involves a lot more thoracic mobility. So if somebody's locked here and then they're locked here, they don't have that option to bend upwards. So then they have to compensate here, but then it's a mental thing. Then it becomes an unwilling thing. A lot of people won't do that. But yes, energetically, it's the same idea. So this is why you start on the floor. It's more accessible. Start at the standing. It's more accessible. Work to the floor. It's more challenging. Right. Modification: sit on the floor, sit on the wall. The floor is going to be actually a progression. It's going to be harder. You can use straps. I don't think it's a great idea just because it encourages the compensation a little bit more. It encourages people to work with straight legs, to lock out, and then they're still pulling on their vulnerable joints. So in my experience, they're going to get more out of it if you set them up against the wall.
So is bending your knees for considered a modification or?
Yeah. But one that I think is appropriate 98% of the time.
And that's one of those, I feel like, if it's unwilling, because most people can bend their knees, they just won't. It will not.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's better to keep their knees, so I always demonstrate my knees bent. But I feel more of a stretch through my spine when I bend my knees.
I feel like it's also like a competition thing in our own head. Oh, but I want to get there and I want to have this.
The thing is going to go faster,
like,
yeah.
Perfect posture, this idea of what is the perfect posture.
Yeah.
I said that in our class that we were teaching to teenagers the other day. I was like, don't worry about the poster of yoga and what it looks like, because that's not you. You know, we're all different. Carla and I don't do these poses the exact same way. We're different people, so quit competing with each other.
Mhm.
Right? It's so cute.
And the thing is, to the untrained eye, there's things, as a photographer, there are things that I do, right? You've worked with me. You guys have both worked with me. There's things that you do to cheat the angle on a camera lens that make it look a certain way that aren't actually how the body moves in space. So I'll show you guys an example of a back bend later. And if you guys, you know, we're going to train our eye to see, like, the shape is basically correct, but every single joint along the way is wrong. Wrong in terms of it's injurious.
And in terms of teaching, maybe you could say, I want you to try two different stretching.
Yeah.
And I'll try everything at leg straight. What do you
Versus just adjusting it.
How do you feel this in your spine or whatever?
My suggestion is always to start people together and progress, because people don't like to regress. So like I said, I can get my elbows past I've got tons of space. I can even work here on the wall. So feel free to start everybody in the same place. You're not doing anybody a disservice by doing that. And then the people that can't take that any more information, they max out, and then you're talking to the people that can kind of skip to that page and then go with you to the next chapter. Okay, Padangusthasana, what's next? Padahastasana. Pada is feet. Hasta. H and H. It's pretty easy. They sound the same. Same contraindications here. It's a little bit more. So this in and of itself is a progression. We know when we are trying to get the hands under the feet, it's a tighter shape. It's more challenging. What was I going to say about this? Okay. Sorry, go back. One of the things that I see, and I've just started to pay attention to recently, people who do have a lot of limitations, specifically in the hamstrings, not necessarily, because this is different. Limitations in the hamstrings is different than limitations in the external rotators. Sometimes people have both, sometimes people only have one. When people are very tight in the hamstrings, they access more space by pulling out. So you'll see this. Okay? If they want to do that, let them open their feet more. What is this doing if I open my feet more? It's shortening the shape, right? So it's just making that more accessible. Okay, so yeah. Bend your knees till your belly touches, sure. But that's also available. And guys, you know that everything is just about serving the student. If they're locked out here, they're not going to get the benefit from having their feet 1 foot's distance. You build it into a shape that is benefiting them. Same thing if people have a lot of space. Narrow the stance. They're working to balance here. So you can progress in that way.
People can't reach the ground up, so we kind of block, right?
I think it is,
That's people that base is okay to reach the ground.
for these postures, forward fold in general, yeah. Here's my only thing with this. When people are in forward folds with blocks, they tend to do this. This is why I encourage you to put them against, this is not wrong, as long as it's achieving your objective and they're still letting their head go. If they're staying here, they're locking out their knees, they're straining their low back, they're not getting the benefits of the posture. So here, they also, if they're on the wall, they're supported, they're not at risk. And then they get the energetic benefits of having this connection here.
So when you're folding forward, most of the time, like tell people.
Get there, Gloria, get there.
So if I tell most of them, bend your knees enough so you can bring your torso down to your thighs. Most people can do that. Some people, it seems like they can't do that. Would that be true, or are they just
Sure.
not willing to try?
I mean, you got a lot of different things. They might have a belly. It might be an ability thing for sure. If you have somebody that's very top heavy, this is why I included acro as part of this, because you can, yeah, when that's happening, it's a lot. Again, there's a lot of different possibilities. One possibility, so yes, it might be an unable thing. Again, if you set them up against the wall and you set them up with their forearms, then everything's supported. And then they can have the benefits of being able to drop their head. Everybody can do this. A pregnant person could do this. A person with a heavy upper body can do this. If they have a belly that's keeping them from that, then you don't want them to overcurve their spine to get their forehead down. So you have to modify the shape around a bigger belly. If somebody's very top heavy, so imagine, it could be a man or a woman. Typically the image is of a big man who's up top, very, very heavy, very small down below. And so then it's going to take a lot for them to have enough flexion here. Yeah, if you think of the seesaw of weight. For sure, yeah. That's always an appropriate modification. Okay, are we good with these forward folded postures? And it's important that we understand that the length is not just the hamstrings, it's the entire back line. Next posture, Trikonasana. Trini is 3, Kona is angle, 3 angle posture. Risks. Where are the dangers here? Hyperextension of the hamstring. What else? Maybe something?
I know, I said knee something.
Hyperextension. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, more specifically.
I guess that almost works into like hip flexion. I'm just thinking of like your hips and how that works in your low back.
Yeah, so this is what I see. People want their feet in the right way. They want their legs straight. So everything is pulling here, and then I'm here. Where is the weight leveraged in my back? Somebody come point. On my low back, where is the stress?
pulling from right here.
Yep, it's higher here. Okay, this is where people are going to strain their back. It's asymmetrical. And they're going to potentially could strain a little bit in their SI joint. And then they're going to over rotate. And that's going to just exacerbate all of this. Bend the knee. Okay. So the obstacles here, hamstring flexibility, hip flexor strength. People's ability to extend their leg can be quite limited. The strength-based extension here. So you'll see a lot of this. So guys, I'm sorry, I should make a better point of this. Things that you might see. Collapsing in the back knee. Write this down, things to look for. Collapsing in the back knee. The butt sneaking behind. Take your butt with you. That's how you prevent the low back strain. Neck compression. That's pretty obvious. Just check for wrinkles. And the other thing is a person is likely to compress their neck if the shoulders are not stacked. So if you've got one shoulder back and then one shoulder forward and they're doing anything crazy with the chin, they're going to pinch their nerve. So the shoulders have to be stacked before that chin should be moving up into the top shoulder.
So I have students that, especially in the block, they're not way forward, so I just get them off the block. In the legs. So this is what I'm seeing. They'll have the hand on the block here. And they're just kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
So is it to come up like that? Is that, or maybe even?
Yep. Always bring the floor up.
So
2 blocks or the leg, absolutely, or the leg. At that point, it might make more sense to have it on the leg. It's 100% bend the knee, yeah. And then
I always tell them this is
roots to rise.
no, it's down here.
Down here. Roots to rise, guys. We always start with the. Okay. You just like, okay. You're like Rosie Perez and all the right moves over here. It's like, why is she dance fighting me through the screen? I didn't do nothing to her. I don't owe her no money. Okay, so yes, like, you know, we know that there's a million different components of these postures. Start with the foundation. Always start with the foundation. Start with the feet. So foot placement here. If I haven't made you guys do this in Ashtanga, but you know from the knee class, if we start with the warrior 1 here, we should be able to keep this orientation, this pressure against the block. So depending on how open my hip is in the front, how much I can externally rotate, that's going to dictate my foot placement here. Whew. Okay, I'm maxed out. Here I am just about heel to arch. Okay, so majority of people, this is not the placement for them. More likely, it's at about a 45. It's based on being able to track this front knee over that middle toe, fully pushing here. Trikonasana is just a more complicated expression of that because that has to pull back. Do we understand about knee foot placement? Okay. The feet move around to serve the direction of the pelvis, the relationship between the thigh and the hip. So Trikonasana. Obstacles. Strengthen the feet. Sometimes people just can't push their feet. They haven't used their feet fully. Another obstacle, external rotation and extension of the front hip. So that expresses itself. What you are looking for, the knee is collapsing in. This also happens when it's straight. So if somebody comes here, they start tracking, and then the more they pull, they max out. You'll see this. Okay. This is not in the muscle anymore, it's in the joint. You can see my knee is here, here. You see that difference? And it's, look at what's happening. My whole thigh is rotating around in its socket. Here. Okay. Low back. Yes. If their belly button is facing the floor, you got to get them up. Got to lift the torso. Just elevate the floor, be that by using the hand or the blocks. Another obstacle might be a tight neck. Have them look down. Another obstacle. So when we say tight shoulders, that could mean one of two things. That could mean limited mobility in the thoracic spine, or that could mean a lot of resistance here. It's always interesting to me how those things express themselves separately. So this is that place to check in. If they're rolling forward, but their trunk will move, then their thoracic mobility is there. But then this backpack strap area, this chest part, is very tight. So that's going to be its separate issue to deal with. That'll look like the shoulder head won't roll around. So if it won't roll around bent, we don't leverage it by adding the extension. This adds more weight, this adds more pull, this adds more stress. Okay, so we take away weight. We shorten the seesaw. Okay, understand that about the arm? The priority is to get the shoulders stacked. Then to get this forces the shoulder blade down the back, and you can still see it if that's starting to pull into gravity. So here we're just lengthening the seesaw. Most challenging position to maintain. Okay. At that point, that's flourish. Get the feet right. Questions about this posture? Order of priority. What's the order of priority here? Feet, then getting the knees sorted, right? So those should be sorted according to the hips. So hopefully the hips are forward if the feet and the knees are in the right place. Then, sorting the trunk. And then we start to think about the arms. And then we start to think about the head placement. So you're not going to cover all that ground in one class with one person. Make sure you understand the order of priority. Trikonasana next. Padi is, Padi means side. Vrita, what are vrittis? Changes or revolutions or turns. So they talk about the Chitta Vritti Nirodha. It's the turning of your mind. Parivrita, your side is turning. So Trikonasana, then Parivrita Trikonasana. I want you to put a big, huge marker around this. Chaturanga's a doozy, but this is right up there with it. I'd say this is probably top 3, one of the riskiest postures that we do. And I'm including headstands, handstands, forearm stands, back bends, all of it. This is incredibly precarious. After, in my experience, it's usually after women have had children. If there was any instability in the SI joint, this is where it really goes crazy. Yes.
So A and B, are they the same when I put triangle and triangle? So are the same kind of country obstacles?
For Trigonasana, Parivrita Trigonasana?
Well, we're on
Parivrita Trigonasana. The 4th box. We should be in our 4th box. Actually, our 5th, because the first one was Chaturanga, yeah?
So this is, I get Utita. See, I'm not looking at your charts. So are we doing revolve triangle?
Yep.
And you call that what?
Parivrita Trikonasana.
My chart says Utita.
Yeah, Utita. Utita Trigonasana, Utita. See, it's C, yes.
Sorry about that.
Where's my brain right now? 네, 맞아. Utita is another word for extended or lifted. Parivrita Trigonasana. This is incredibly precarious for the SI joint. This can really, 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 really aggravate the SI joint. If there's any instability after pregnancy, during their menstruation, their joints are more lax. So they're just at greater risk. And a lot of women, you know, I think I started tracking my period last year. So you just don't know. You don't know when your body's releasing those hormones. You don't know when things are getting a little bit loose. And then a lot of people take a lot of advantage of that extra flexibility, and it's not the time to do it.
So would that be why you don't practice?
You know, that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that goes back. Like,
Yeah.
That's like almost.
Don't bleed on your mat.
Idea of what we should.
You're so untouchable during your period.
Yeah,
You know.
I did have a student Ivan actually ask me about that. And I said, in India,
Just so that's that, you know, there's a lot of different. Yeah. No, they take the full moon off and then the first moon, I think, is our rest days. There's a lot of different reasons for that. I think that no, I think that the whole women are dirty when they're menstruating thing is not rooted in anything beneficial. But with this, in terms of you know, like practical, functional knowledge about practice, women are more flexible during that time of the month, and so they have to take more care of their joints, not to go crazy with it. And they're also, because they have more flexibility, they have less stability. So if there's those times of the month you're like, fuck, what's going on? I just can't stand on one leg. Check your calendar. It's probably telling you something. So that was my lazy way of tracking it for a long time. I can't stand up. I guess I gotta go eat chocolate. Yeah, right. So Parivrita Trigonasana. What happens is, and we know this, right? One of the hip bones wants to kick back while the other one is trying to go forward. This is why the SI joints get aggravated, and then we try to hold the position. So you're holding it in that stressed position. Pelvis is meant to work as a team and goes forward. So we don't want to be intentionally putting that pressure on it to go backwards. Incredibly risky, incredibly uncomfortable, incredibly painful. And it's something that just builds in discomfort over time. And it's something that's quite unnecessary, you know. It just means that we're not approaching the posture in a sustainable way. So why is that happening? What's causing this hip bone to drag ass back here? And then we see this, right? So this is hanging back, and then this has to cover the distance. So what is the obstacle?
Hamstrings tight.
This one. The legs work as a pulley system. So when one takes too much, it takes it from the other side. This is why most splits you see are uneven. The dominant side is always taking more than its share. So what's happening here, this is getting maxed out. It's taking from this side. So this is trying to give more, and it's rotating around to give it more space. So bend your fucking knees. Okay, so you give it space to be in the right place. And then from there, then they work as a team to pull back. So we can transfer that same knowledge to Parsvottanasana, to pyramid posture. It's the same foundation. It's a little bit less of an issue because I set you guys up differently. It's a lot harder to compensate in that way because this is completely out of the equation. So from here, you're not really at risk. When you start to come into the extension, it's a little bit different situation. But so any asymmetrical posture, you're going to have that situation. One of the hip bone wants to go forward, one of them goes back. Marichasana, another one. This is where I popped my SI joint. So it's real. It's very, very dangerous. Please exercise much caution. So obstacles. Bend the front knee. It's the front knee that's taking more than its share. What else is happening? What else do I see with this posture? This. Oh, I see this. So this is locked out. So what people do is they tend to shift the center of gravity here by moving their chest out this way. Can you guys see that compensation? Okay. With my chest, do you see how I'm swinging? I've lost my center of gravity here. I'm swinging all the way out. You'll see this a lot. And again, if you bend the knee, you give yourself space, you can open up. If, let's see, why is that happening? When we start twisting on a flexed axis, it's very easy to injure your back. So whenever we twist, you guys know this, we start with extending the spine. We have to have that elongated place to work around, not trying to negotiate this way, not working to the side. You should never work in 45-degree angles with these twists. It's always up and then a very sharp turn, not down and around. Upper hand, let's see, hip, same progression. Stacking the shoulders first, then adding level of difficulty by adding more joints. Okay, so how do we modify for the upper body? Blocks, bring the floor up. Just bring the floor up. Questions about Parvata Trikonasana? Bringing so that the torso doesn't have to be as close to the floor. Okay. So teachers, what's the difference between putting the block inside and outside of the foot? What is appropriate for whom and why? It's a deeper expression of the posture. Yep. So you start them in and then progressively work them out. That in and of itself is a progression. So it's going to vary person to person. If it's a hamstring issue, they can probably get to the floor. But then if it's a rotational issue, they might stay further inside. If they have more rotation, they might be able to go outside of the foot, but then they'll be higher because of the hamstring. So it's kind of, you know, it's a flexible equation there.
And I find with this one, I always just cute block on the inside of the foot. And then anybody else in the class
That knows or
knows, they're gonna know they can
totally.
Because otherwise, if you give them the choice.
They're never going to regress.
they'll
Yep.
take the outside one,
Mm-hmm.
and I just take inside.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and I might even go over to someone that's totally, you know, do the one say, you can also try to bring it and just do a one-on-one.
Mhm.
This scares me to teach.
It's a doozy.
I always teach it with blocks.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, if nothing else, they're never going to get hurt. If that happens, we're good. We're good. We'll talk more about how to kind of trick students into getting into position next week. Got lots of, wow. Okay. Next. No. Parsvakonasana and then Parvrita. So Parsvakonasana. Parsva is side, kona, angle. Parsva kona asana. Parsva konasana. Contraindications. So we have a bent knee here. It's not so much the hamstring that's restrictive, but what's going on? What compensations do we see? Or what are the risks? What could happen in this posture? Worst case scenario, what could happen? Which one? Front. Okay. Why does that happen? Why? What's the, if I am unable, what is the inability? Where is it stemming from? Rotator. Mhm. Do we know the difference between those two movement patterns? ADD, add, ABD, straight out. So this lateral line, rotation, here. External, internal. Okay. So I always think add the thigh in. You're adding them together. ABD, away, external, internal. So people are collapsing here. So when I have you roll the thigh out, what's that? Curve. This is fighting you.
For the mobility in the hip socket.
The muscles might be weak or they might be tight. Usually it's both. So yeah, with this posture, weak external rotators, tight external rotators. Shoulder mobility. That could be the thoracic spine or it could be the chest. So we know this. Let me attach this to another posture. When we're doing Utkatasana, what do you notice about when people start to bring their arms overhead? Shoulders can come up. What else do we see? What have you seen, either in yourself or in your students? Okay, they come like this. Yep. What else? What other things happen? That might happen. Yeah, just stay with this part of the body, my chest. Mm-hmm. Do we see the elbows bend? People do crazy things with their wrists. Okay, so in terms of working a regression here, if somebody has some mobility issues in their shoulder or in their chest, we need to make sure they're in a workable space. So from here, understanding that movement, when the body goes like this, we have all of this restriction here, just based on the anatomy. If anybody's done my back bending, I can demonstrate this if you want, but when you come like this, I can only come this far with I'm at my maximum back bend here. I'm just beyond my ears. When I go backwards, all I'm doing is changing the orientation. Look at how much more space I have. Okay, that's just changing the way that I start. That's it. From here, maximum back bend, backwards. The joint is meant to move in this way. So with students, you give them the most access by taking them backwards. This might be appropriate to stay here. Then here. Then here. The hardest thing is to get that full last ounce of that wrap here. So people will stay here. You'll see people turn their palms out. You'll see people bend their elbows. That's telling you, so write that down. Thumbs, palms out, look for palms out, look for bent elbows, look for shoulders up by the ears. This is all telling you that they have some sort of limitation in their shoulder. Needs a modification. Or bent elbows, palms out, like they're looking at their fingernails. You'll see that. Yeah, they won't go for the full overhead motion. They'll be, but just in terms of the orientation of the hand, it'll be backwards. This is considered backwards in this posture.
Yeah, I would almost say that it's like they turn their hand the opposite direction of what they usually, what you're
Supposed to,
hoping,
yeah.
that they would do, and instead it's facing the opposite direction.
You'll see this. Because they're reaching. They're going for it. Okay. But this is really hard to articulate. And when their wrist turns, we know that that starts that articulation. So you'll see the elbows bent, you'll see the palms turned out, you'll see the shoulder up by the ear. Take them back here. Now, let's switch modes for a second from teachers to students. When you are at the point where you can get overhead with extension, then we start to challenge ourselves by starting from that frontward position. If everything else in place, because what you have to do is then move the whole body around to then access that same space that comes from just changing the orientation of the hands. So this is a progression. What's a progression? Progression of what to what? Let me go through it again. If I'm maximizing all the space in the joint, going backwards, there's more space backwards than there is going forwards, right? Okay? Less, more. I have pretty much accessed all the space that's available to me. No collapsing in the neck. I'm good here. Now I'm going to challenge myself by starting here from the opposite position, come up, and I have to move everything else around. I have to use more muscle rather than the joints to get the same amount of space. This is a progression. We make it harder by coming up this way. Mm-hmm. So again, if you watch like demonstrations by Kino or whomever, they always come up. No compression in the neck, everything's okay in the low back. That's hard as hell to do. So that is an eventuality. For most people, just trying to build into a normal, you know, a Western medicine range, normal range of mobility, coming backwards is going to give you the most benefit. Start with the hand and the hip. Once the shoulders are stacked, then we add more weight, same progression, ear, overhead. Parsvakonasana, then Parivrita Parsvakonasana. Okay, let me talk you through these cues. Again, you know, what we're talking about, how you basically trick people into doing it the right way. This is why I have everybody start in the low lunge. This is the setup. You know, as a note for you as a practitioner, the progression is to go directly into it. Sometimes I feel very ambitious. Usually I have such short arms. This is more advantageous for me to start in a low lunge, get my upper body oriented, and then bring my lower body underneath of me. Okay, so there's no like extra points for going into it directly. Set it up correctly. Low lunge. Rotation. Extension. We gotta get that spine sorted. So all of this is to eliminate risk. I don't want somebody tugging on their, trying to come into a twist when there's any instability.
Are we on to the next question?
Parivrita Parsvakonasana, yep. Hand to hand, progressively, hand to hip, progressively. This is going to depend on the practitioner. The block can get a little bit nutty. If they're going to use the block, I do not recommend having them use the block like we normally would think of using the block. I recommend, for the safety and comfort of the wrist, is to have them work on the edge of the block. Here. Notice, look at the angle of my hand here. Even here, I'm still, yeah. So I don't have to change any. Obviously, I want to get into a place where that's not happening, but for now, just work with the edge of the block. All you want is something to give you that feedback into the hand that it's should continue to do what it's doing. Then as the rest of the body allows you to straighten out the wrist, this is coming all the way from here, right? It's not just the wrist unto itself. It's a whole line of movement. So if they're working on the block, work on the edge of the block. There's no need in causing a wrist injury with this modification. Hip, ear, overhead, same check. Crazy stuff with the wrist, bending the elbow. It is my preference to have them work with, if they are starting to come overhead, to work with a straight joint and to have less rotation than to have them come into full rotation here and then bend the elbow, because then you have a breakdown in the execution of that arm. They're not building themselves into something successive over time. They're just, basically this is a cheat. Okay? You're gonna get more out of it if the elbow's extended and you just back off taking it overhead. Next.
And you just back it up 1 second.
Yep.
You said that the contraindication is similar to Did you say that?
Contraindications of Parivrita Parsvakonasana. Oh, skipped right over that. Contraindications typically have to do with the rotation of the spine. So when people try to change the arms when they're still in that C curve. That side of the body needs to straighten out first. What's another one?
Obstacles to rebalancing.
For sure. How do we address that? In a high, stay down or widen the width of the feet. Yeah, laterally. This can put a little bit of pressure on the shoulder if people are letting their knee fight their arm. So make sure that you check for that. Check if the shoulder is coming up near the chin. That's a sign that they're putting pressure here and potentially on the neck. And then anytime the shoulders aren't stacked and somebody tries to come overhead here and they just pull without rotating, they're pulling directly on their rotator cuff. So pay attention to that. If they're trying to extend their arm to the ceiling without taking the rest of the trunk with them, if it's the arm moving independently. Next. Prasarita Padottanasana, A through D. What are the risks of this posture? Hamstrings. SI joint usually aggravating the sciatic nerve or sciatic pain. Tight glutes. Yeah. Yeah. Prasarita Padottanasana. Pada Uttana Padottanasana. It's a blended. Same issues with the blood pressure, balance. Potential risk in the knees if people are pitching forward. You guys know those obvious checkpoints. What does it mean if we see somebody pitching forward in the knees? What is that telling you about their body? Putting their weight in the toes. What do we do about that? Lift the toes up. Yeah, get the weight back. Take it. You can't play with those anymore. You can't treat them nice. Limited external rotation.
Except some of the time you tell us.
Once the weight is back. It's like doing a squat. Safety then depth. When you're training squats, or when I'm training Utkatasana, I always start here because I know that this is people's tendencies. When I'm teaching this, I always break people. I was like, never let that be the. If you say bend your knees, this is where they go. Hips back. You want the weight back. So you just take their toes away from them. Here, okay, they're good. Now you add a little bit of strength here. This is going to allow them to go a little bit deeper because then you have say hello. I should have made my millions with this. There's a market for that somewhere. So
Totally is.
We were in New York. We know this stuff. So this is secondary. But yes, that is part of the process. eventually. Yeah, so when we're in Prasarita Padottanasana here, our external rotators are fighting us, and that's why this starts to happen. So here, it's a compound movement, right? This starts to rotate out, and then this pulls up here. Simultaneously, length from the upper body down. So of course we want to cue the foundation, but we need to remain mindful that there's a whole other part of the body that's part of this process as well. Especially in the forward folds, those tend to fall off. So people start to get pressure when the hamstrings are tight. They're fighting that. These lateral ligaments get overused. So this, when you see this, they're pulling up, but this is still just like Trikonasana. This isn't rotating out. So they're using ligament rather than muscle. Bend the knees. That's it. Just bend the knees. Okay. This is a situation where I would bring somebody up higher on blocks. If they're in this forward position. Is there another block floating around somewhere? Because you don't want people to go crazy here. This becomes a very unstable, then they're just trying to not die. They're just trying, right? They're just trying not to get split open. So you have to find that appropriate distance where there's some integrity to it, and a little bit of feeling like they can sustain it. So from here, they can bring the hands up here. But notice I'm still trying to get my belly button to my legs. This just enables them to access the upper body better. This allows them to generate power here so that their spine can lengthen through that opened up space, through these gates, right? Here, forward. A, B, same thing, same upper body cues, using the block. C. Okay. Let's talk about C. Prasarita Padottanasana C, with the arms interlaced, with the fingers interlaced. This is very precarious for the rotator cuffs. This is also quite precarious for the neck. What people tend to do, they just end up pulling on the joints. That will look like this big ball here rolling through. It's going to look like two big balls right around their face. Now, instead, what we want to do, notice how I'm backing off here a little bit so I have some space to work. I'm going to pull, bent elbows. Again, give me space to work. I'm going to pull my shoulder blades together off my ears. Keep it there. And then the torso covers the distance here. So notice there's no dropping ever of this into the neck. This stays back. This stays safe.
So for people that can't replace
Stay here, elbows together. This is it should be an extension of what we just did. Everything builds on itself. So when we were here, you're training your body to keep this back without any support in B. Then we add the extra piece of leverage. Here it's positioning. Here there's weight.
That's so that we can see where your belly button much further through, but you've already done A, B, and C to kind of prepare yourself.
And
So the
everything's.
modification oftentimes is you're told to take a towel or a strap or something like that. Not as.
I'm not super into that because I think it still encourages. I'm not going to say that it's wrong because I think that there are teachers who can cue it to in a way that's beneficial. Majority of people are going to use it to tug on their back harder. Where did all the straps go? Thanks. Let me show you from a seated position, and then the same thing is, I think it's a little bit less precarious when they're standing because they still have to balance themselves. They still have to put the pieces. What people tend to do here, what do people do?
I'm talking
This.
behind your back. Strapped behind your back.
Like this?
Yeah, yeah, if they can't bring their fingers.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. For that, yeah. For the feet, I don't think it's as good. Or like this. Because people end up still pulling like this. But yes, to connect the hands, a towel or whatever, yeah, for sure.
How wide should your feet be?
Depends on your hips. So,
There's not a guideline.
no. I mean, you know, you get Iyengar, he's going to say like 1 7/18 of a meter, blah, blah, blah. Because my backside is quite flexible, I have quite a narrow stance. If somebody has less mobility, they go wider. What you need to make sure is that you're not going so wide that you're just you'll see this. Guys, sorry. Here, this is a major one. See how my ankle bone is pushing out? You'll see this, and the feet will start to kind of grip for dear life. Okay, this is a lot of pressure on the ankles, and then that stress just translates to the rest of the joints. Where do I feel it? I feel like I just can't access power in my legs. Okay. I have heard it to push the outer side of the foot. Opposite, push the inside of the foot. This should be lined up. Should be able to use the bone along with it. So if you're coming wide and you're still able to hit all the checkpoints, your belly button's touching, you're pushing through the big toes, and then you're able to come forward, go for it, right? Progressively work in. Narrow. Yep. Collapsing out. Yeah. A lot of pressure in the outsides of the ankles. So check for that. That's another thing. That's another example of a compensation. The feet are rolling out. And then it's this shape. And we all know that this is not a very strong shape. This is what they're doing on the floor. No power there. Okay, Prasarita Padottanasana finished. Questions about that posture? Order of priority, bottom to top. Get the feet sorted, work from there. What's next? What's the Sanskrit? Parsva side, Uttana, intense forward fold. Parsvottanasana. This is a really good example of making sure that you are working with the proper priorities. Just in the same way that we know that one takes, the other gives, the same thing happens in the relationship between the upper and the lower body. When the upper body takes, the lower body has to give it, has to compensate in some way. So we want that to be balanced, but we want to make sure that the foundation is our priority. So we've done this in class, we take the arms out of it, make sure that we've got our hips sorted before we move on and we start to add more plates to juggle. Same setup as Parivrita Trikonasana, right? Make sure that you probably need to bend the knee. You probably need to create more space so that this can come around so you can level out so you're not causing any issues. Upper body. Progression. Interlacing the fingers. Just keeping this open space with bent elbows. Next. One, working asymmetrically. Is an asymmetrical posture. Working the back of the hand, right? We know this, that the back of the hand is available to us more than the palm of the hand. So we allow that to be our progression. Yes. The front leg is always the down. So in Garuda, front leg, bottom arm, front leg, bottom arm. Here. Okay. So from here, maximizing the space in the shoulder, maximizing the space, the little bit of space available to us from the wrist. From here, checking in. I use this as a checkpoint, doing this upper body, hooking the fingers, if you can work with that. Just because you're kind of resisting the compensation space here. Then you would start to work with the palm out. You can either hold or do a second fist. This is a long journey to reverse prayer, right? And then finally, if both wrists are on board, reverse prayer.
Once you reverse prayer, is it the next expression that you see?
That should be there the whole time. This should be open across the body continuously. This is coming in to make space for that. Order of priority. Number 1, level the hips. Number 2, Parsva, side. Both sides of the body are long. What you will see are people curving to the right on the front. They start to drift off like this. So getting both sides of the body the same length. Number 3, adding the arms in a way that's not antagonistic. You're just kind of turning up the volume on the challenge of the posture. Parsvottanasana, what's next? This is where we would start. Oh, no, it's not. Yes. What's the name? Uttita Hasta Padangushtasana. Yes. You know what's amazing? Google will correct the spelling. It's kept all of my Sanskrit consistent.
Yeah, once you start looking for 1, 2, these popping up. Right.
It's crazy. Risks. Yeah, for sure, balance. Okay, we just talked about that. Sometimes them. Balance is an issue. What other risks are there with this? SI joint aggravation?
Just be what I learned.
Why?
It's
How
like
could
I
this,
said,
how could this cause SI joint problems?
Did you, okay, I'm gonna admit my ignorance, I didn't before. SI joints, but
Sacroiliac joint. It connects your sacrum to your ilium. So it's the kind of the rubber bands that attach the triangle to these side wings. Mine are super obvious. I've got like all the scar tissue all over them. But
Your SI is about here.
your sacrum is at the base. It's the triangle here. It's where if you can kind of feel.
Okay.
This is your tailbone. So your coccyx is at the base of the sacrum. You have this triangle here. You have these two wings, your ilium. And then you have these rubber bands, these ligaments that attach. And that's your SI joint. You have two of them.
Okay.
So your pelvis is 3 bones.
So you broke those?
Didn't break it. It didn't snap. It felt like it snapped. Severely strained it. I heard something.
Sometimes even just your ligaments of your feet can feel like you fractured a bone.
Yeah.
'Cause
I could barely walk.
I've done that with my feet before, where the ligaments were so cold to the outside, it felt like I broke it and I couldn't walk on it.
Oh. I got so scared. I heard something. Maybe I did pop it, but I heard something in class when I went for the bind that I shouldn't have gone for, and then I couldn't do cat count. I was like, oh, I made a mistake. This was not worth the add-on to my gym membership. So, it's like I said, it's a major issue for a lot of adult women. Anytime you're in an asymmetrical posture, Warrior 1 is another one that really tends to get it to flare up. Totally. You just move everything around until this is set. Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana.
balance SI joints.
Why? Why do SI joint problems flare up here? What's happening?
Stretching your you get a balance of your, that's why you like to keep it out of your hips.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so watch my, oh, about this belly tightening. Okay, let's go this side. So if I come, let's do it on this side. This is my real flexy side. So if I go way up, I can come here. Do you see how my hip is way up towards the ceiling? Okay. Notice how I'm trying to straighten this, so I'm taking it from my bottom leg. Instead of doing that, everything needs to come back into position. So from here, let me get sorted here. From here, I need to rotate around, get this drop down, and then push back to the front. And then rein my leg in. Here. Now I'm level. So my hamstring will go, but it doesn't mean that my hips should. So I need to build this around that shape. Now, if I have more space, this actually needs to come closer into my body. This is where that leverage comes in here. This action of the pull back. So this needs to come closer to the body first before it starts to lift up towards the ceiling. So the extension is not the priority here. We build the shape from a solid foundation so that this is not getting aggravated. The hamstrings are the cause. The SI joint is the effect. So when this starts to pop up, it's because the hamstrings have they've maxed out. So you're finding more space by just hiking up the whole hip.
me, when I, my left shoulder, when I hold it like with both my fingers, it activates my shoulder. It hurts, it's pinching.
Here. Okay, so that's telling you that, again, something's not firing here to pull it back and to balance out that amount of pressure. So that should be the thing that initiates here. And then the toes are only giving enough resistance to meet that amount of pull. It shouldn't overpower it. If you're feeling that, you just got to pump the brakes until that's built up to where, or just have a different grip. But that is a good opportunity to work on that because you can feel that degree of change, and it's slow. What are the contraindications? Yes, so if somebody is having a shoulder issue, just pulling straight out, this is, right? You keep going. If the leg gets away from you, it's going to take the arm with it. So it's learning to temper that power and to get the shoulder back in place. Okay, so it's, again, understanding the difference in articulation between the arm and the trunk, and the muscles in the trunk. Other risks, the hip and the shoulder. Yeah. I would say if somebody's foot placement is off. So our natural, right, in Shavasana, our neutral position is usually about a 45. When we are balancing, it should be in order to access this strength. So we should be slightly pigeon-toed. So yeah, so if we're having a hard time balancing that position, it means that the muscles need to get built up to carry you rather than turning out to rely on the joints. Because that's the first thing people do when they start losing their balance. The foot will drop out, the joints will catch them, because the joints aren't super smart. The muscles have a lot of brain, right? The muscles have a lot of responsiveness. So that needs to get built up. Okay. Side. Same thing. So it's important. It's the same thing as what we talked about with the shoulder. My leg may go like this, I just don't have as much space. So if I allow myself to bend this first, then to rotate, I'm able to get way further here. So just do yourself the favor, bend it, rotate, then extend. Those are two separate movements, and they're muscles that are kind of antagonistic to each other. So put them in place, put them in order. Rotate, then extend. It's the same thing as when I have you guys bend into Trikonasana. I'm just trying to set you up for success. So if this is in place, then we're able to pull from here properly, rather than coming from, the Ashtanga entry is from here. Majority of people aren't in the right position with this front leg when they're coming in like this. You're just able to get way more space if we come down and back. Questions about this posture? What will we see? Again, we understand the pulley system of the hamstring length. The standing leg starts to collapse when the extended leg gets too greedy. If the standing leg is collapsing, we got to pull back with that hamstring. The foundation is the priority. Next. Yep, next posture. Ardha. What is Ardha? Half. What is Baddha? What is Baddha Konasana? I don't. What's this posture in English? Look at me. What's this posture in English?
There's like butterfly,
Cobbler's pose.
cobbler's bound ankle.
Bound angle. That's a literal translation of the name. Baddha Kona, bound angle. So Ardha, half, Baddha, bound, Padma. What's Padma? Padma. It's beautiful. Beautiful flower. Lotus. Padma. Uttana. Intense forward fold. Half, bound, lotus, forward fold. Ardha, Baddha, Padmottanasana. Issues. Knees, knees, and more knees. I didn't realize for a long time, I thought the only risk was on the inside of the knee. So this is so interesting to me. If somebody has pain on the inside, their hip external rotators are tight. If somebody has pain on the outside, their hamstrings are tight. So people recruit space based on, yes, gladly. In half lotus, if people have pain on the inside of their knee, it means that their external rotation is tight. If people have pain on the outside of their knee, it means that their hamstrings are tight. And tight is a relative term. We learned that from Stephanie. Western medicine, Eastern medicine, yoga, gymnastics. It's a relative term to your, to your experience. Just meaning that there's some tight in the sense that there's some sort of compensation happening. It's a limiting factor.
So I struggle with that pose, but it never bothers my knee. I just can't do it.
Your body's so resistant, it's like, no.
But it's never hurt anything I can possibly do.
Well, that's good. And it's also about you not pushing it to the point where you're blowing your knee out. I think it's also about the mindfulness of the practitioner, right? So seeing when it's starting to fall apart. So if it's not getting to that point, then great. Okay, so inside of the knee, external rotation. It means that this bone is pulling forward. So it's usually from the leverage of this. This is coming here, and that this won't roll around. So this pressure is staying here because you're trying to leverage it, and then this is just starting to pull away rather than the whole hip moving as a unit. Hamstring. I haven't quite figured out how to articulate what's going on with that, but I just know that those two things are connected. So what do we do with this? I think, as you guys know in class, I think it's more beneficial to take it all the way across and then use the hand to reinforce the shape. I think this is a better preview of where they're going. It forces them to muscle it a little bit. And also, as a teacher, people don't listen when I say to stand in tree and then just to get their knee out. So with this, I think if they're bending forward, they have to kind of earn the shape a little bit more. This is just a Mindy thing. So I know that people are going to bend forward. They want to look like they're doing the posture. So this is pretty safe, and it's